So if you could just kind of tell us your story a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, that is actually one of the things that I think was the biggest roadblock for me getting to some treatment and healing. I grew up with the idea that PTSD was just something that happened to veterans. I mean, war combat veterans, that's all I knew. I never even really thought until 9/11 about first responders, honestly. And then just as I aged and learned more, my perspective broadened on what PTSD was. When I was finally diagnosed with complex PTSD, and I mean, for clarity, that's not even technically a diagnosis yet. It's not made it into the DSM yet. But the therapist I was working with at the time told me there's this thing called complex PTSD. It is not in the DSM yet, but we all know it exists. It's essentially PTSD, but for people who have had maybe smaller traumas, but more of them, and they sort of build up in the system, especially childhood trauma, which is where my complex PTSD came from. Growing up, I knew my parents seemed very unfair and that I cried a lot. And as I grew up, I had nightmares about my family all the time. I didn't realize they were night terrors. I didn't realize my tight muscles and constant headaches and stress and IBS. All of these things came from my childhood. And I never took it seriously because I always compared myself to, veterans and thought, well, I don't have anything compared to what they've been through.
Yep, but I think that's part of the, and I think that's why a lot of people are still hiding in the background and thinking,
Yes.
well, that's because there's nothing that I did in my life that would warrant this. What were your results from this? I knew that you went to therapy, and then how did you get to Dr. Rao?
That is a great question. And I think I just also want to comment on what you were just saying about the stigma, because I think there's just so much shame around all of this. I think when you grow up in a household like this, you sort of start to figure out that this is probably your fault, even though, later in therapy, you find out it wasn't. So I think we start out young blaming ourselves for how we're being treated. And then that just grows into this shame. Like, I can't get treatment because, it's my fault. And I think that's what stops a lot of us. And also just the, misunderstanding that you have to be seriously traumatized to the point of, having a grenade blow up at you to do damage to your brain. And that's obviously not true. Small traumas build up over time. So there's that. But yeah, I've done years of therapy, and it wasn't really until my most recent therapist where she had me read a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about how, yeah, you have anxiety, you'll have depression, you'll have these things, but it's a much bigger picture than that, because all of that trauma has rewired your brain, and it affects your mental health, sure, but it also affects inflammation and your immune system and all of these different things. So I started to realize that therapy wasn't going to fix me. It was going to have to be far more holistic than that. And that's when I found out about this injection. I figured if I'm sort of stuck in fight or flight, no matter how much therapy I do, it's not going to fix the indigestion and the problems with my stomach and, the tight muscles, et cetera. So for me, this was sort of one of the last steps. I did a lot of therapy, and then this was one of the last steps I've taken so far, just to sort of get my body caught up with where my brain is now, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Unfortunately, it does.
Yeah.
So then you reached out to have this procedure, and I believe that we saw you in one of our other offices. And can you recall that day?
Yes. I arrived, I was running late. I was having a spaz attack as usual, because I'm very high strung because of all these things. But once I got there, everyone was so nice. And then once I met you, it became a lot easier. But one thing that really struck me was how fast the whole thing was. I somehow thought it would be much more drawn out and painful. I didn't experience pain. I would say there may be, may have been some discomfort during the injection, but nothing significant. And one of the best parts was having you there sort of talking me through it and patting my shoulder and arm, because it is something that I think seems scarier than it actually is. So you are hyped up anxiety wise. So having you guys in there being so gentle and calm really helped me. And I just couldn't believe how quickly it was over. And the other thing that blew me away was that I felt different within minutes.
Different how?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best way I can describe this is that it feels like most of my life, my heart has sort of been beating loudly in my head, sort of this like boom, 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 like blood rushing through my head all the time. That was gone within 2 to 3 minutes of the injection. I don't hear that or feel that at all anymore. Now I am just much calmer on a daily basis.
Well, excellent.
Yeah.
See, this is why we do what we do. You know, you're speaking to the patient prior to the procedure, and their anxiety or their, depression or their PTSD, they're at like a level 10.
Yep.
I'm literally seeing patients sit up from the procedure and just begin crying because it's so profound to them that they no longer have that anxiety in such a quick time. And Dr. Rao's an amazing proceduralist who's been doing this for many, many years. And I've had the honor of working with him for 15 years plus, but making sure that we know that we have this. Now we need to relate to you that we have this. We have you. You are well, taken care of, and you're in great hands.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had no doubt that I was in great hands, and all of you had a very calming energy about you. So that was very encouraging. So it was just a great experience.
Well, good. Well, would you recommend this to others?
Absolutely. I went for years wishing for some sort of like miracle cure, and I probably have taken every anti-anxiety medication, every antidepressant. None of them ever helped. They all made it worse. And I kept saying, well, why isn't there some quick fix? And obviously it is more complicated than that, but this was a pretty quick fix for the physical aspects of PTSD. And that goes a long way. I actually just had my first massage yesterday since having the injection. It was a completely different experience. Like
It was enjoyable, I'm sure.
Yes, like my muscles usually like fight back really hard. And my massage therapist, who's been working on me for a while, was like, what happened to you? How are you so relaxed? And I said, I have no idea. It's all this. So it has made a massive difference.
I think that, and you commented that I helped you, but my comment back was, I think you helped me as much as I helped.
Well,
appreciate that you took time out of your busy schedule to discuss this with us.
absolutely. And I really appreciate all of you. And I really just hope that this will spread the word to so many people who are suffering, and they know that there are answers out there.